Hey, it's Adam here, and you're watching The Culture Hack, where we're talking about how to create engaged workspaces that unlock the potential of your teams and drive your business forward in ways you've never seen. So stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to The Culture Hack. Today we're going to talk about, among other things, all things tech and AI and some exciting things that my guest John Carpenter has on the go. John is the CTO of Black Square. Welcome, John. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Adam. Happy to be here.
So first and foremost, let's talk about you. Tell us about Black Square.
Great. I'd love to jump into it. I'm the CTO of Black Square, and what Black Square does is we've got alcohol, wine, and spirits distribution around the world. So all that magic that happens behind the scenes is kind of what Black Square does. In addition to that, we run our own brands, Canada Craft Club Wine Collective and Wine Folly for it as well. And these are customer-facing brand. So if you wanted to have a wine club subscription, we provide all that sort of expertise. Been around for about a decade, Calgary based, all over Canada, but we are a remote team. So we do have operations in UK, Australia, Asia, got some down in the States, and a good portion in Canada.
Amazing. So not only is it a cool offering with your wine and beer club, but it sounds like you've grown and now you're internationally have a presence and all virtual. That's very cool. So a lot of things come to mind there when we talk about business culture, not only just for growth, but for having multiple locations and keeping people engaged when they can't meet in person all the time. But first, want to hear from you. What does engagement mean to you when we talk about that from a business culture perspective?
Yeah, so Black Square has actually gone through a really rough sort of history of growing up into this sort of engagement. When we started to initially ramp up, and then COVID hit, and as you can imagine, on the e-commerce space for alcohol, we were hit with a very fast ramp-up period. And we weren't able to have an office where people can meet up and we can carry through this one. So we had to carry our culture for this growth and everything into the remote situation really quickly. And we were looking for growing in different regions for it. So we ran into a lot of problems for those ones. Additionally, Black Square does the whole spectrum, from running our own warehouses to last mile delivery for it. Means we've got a lot of different sort of levers and company operations that have to get done. So what happens in the warehouse and how the warehouse team gets engaged is much different than how a marketing team will get engaged. Mm-hmm. And so what we tried initially is to have a great culture at the top and then just funnel it all down. But it doesn't work that way. The teams build their own cultures for them. So what we found was easier is to build this sort of transparency and trust across these different teams to let them work better. And that's where we really started to see our scale. So when we allow these cultures and these teams to build around their own sort of capabilities and trust them that they could do their work for it, it becomes much easier. And so then our culture is about getting these teams to talk to each other in the same sort of language. And so that's where our transparency comes into it. If we start talking about data, so data-driven company means that our warehouse team could talk about ship out times and time to first order, and then the marketing team can understand what that means back and forth. So then they can talk on the same parallel language for it as well. So no overriding culture. There's lots of different subcultures for them in terms of engagement, how they meet up in person, what do they do for their own activities for him, and we just try to facilitate that working across the board.
Very, very interesting. So kind of like let them be and behave and interact the way they want. Don't try and control it, but we all are part of this greater entity, and here's how we can communicate and be transparent between teams so that we're not completely isolated from each other. I love it. So do you have
that's great.
Do you have some examples or stories of how you really try to implement this transparency and get the different teams talking and connected?
I could talk about one of the successful outcomes we had. So we run a customer service one for it as well, and the customer service started to get a couple of requests for a very exclusive alcohol. So the thing is about people who buy alcohol online, the vast majority of them are either buying for gifts or collecting for them. So you look for very exclusive type bottles on the online category for them. So customer service started to get some requests for a bottle which was not typically sold in that region for them. They started to talk around the different ones saying, look, hey, we're getting a request for this one, and then talk to the data analytics team. And the data analytics team said, well, look, we're also getting some searches online for this one. And we're starting to get the requests in on the retail side for it. So those teams now started to talk back and forth in terms of the transparency, can now pull the data from the marketing efforts and some of the supply chain stuff and the customer service all together and say, look, there's a good business case for importing this bottle into this specific country for it. And that bottle turned out to sell immensely well. So if it was done up to any individual team, the supply chain team wouldn't have seen that sort of correlation. The marketing team said, well, you get lots of search requests for them, and the data teams for them. But having this ability, this transparency of moving that data back and forth and allowing the teams the democratic access to that data means that they can now make these decisions. And so this is we should introduce bottle X in this country because we think it's going to be successful. That came from the bottom up. So it came from these subculture teams up to the management. And then at this point, we just have to say, yep, let's sign the money and ship some bottles there. I had to do a couple relabels, and that's about it.
Amazing. I love that. So like people came together with this idea and built it into something that actually made money and helped the business, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it was fantastic.
I love it. That's pretty cool. So what do you see looking into the future? You know, you and I talked a little bit about some of the A stuff you're involved in. Have you brought that into Blacksquare? Like, how do you see the future of keeping your team engaged going?
Yeah, we use, Blacksquare's been for the last decade a data-driven culture. We tend to follow after where the data sits. So we've always had this culture of having this layer of data underneath most of our decisions for them. And so what AI layers on top of that one is this capability of understanding the data at a much deeper level for it and helping us out. So in terms of the analysis, what we can now use is the AI to be able to parse through our data and find these sort of correlations, hopefully well ahead of time. So we're not running into this luck that a couple people stumble upon this sort of situation and we can pull out of them. Particularly some of these large language models, we're starting to look at those as a way for these teams to now talk to each other for it. So what you can have is, it started as a simple sort of marketing approach. If you're familiar with digital marketing, it's got its own language, it's got its own acronyms for them, and especially in the e-commerce world, when we talk about conversion rates and ROAS and all these other numbers, that's not a natural thing for a lot of other parts of the company. But now they can go on ChatGPT and say, without worrying about embarrassing yourself, saying, what does this mean? Like, what is a good number for it? How do we talk about it? And so now when these numbers come up on the transparency numbers, you can understand what marketing's talking about, or marketing could understand what customer service means on the customer rate. These type of things that really help the company come together. Understanding and empathizing to other people's jobs helps the teams work together. And so I think the language models can help bridge that and help people build more empathy. It's weird that you're using technology in a way that's going to build more empathy, but I think it does.
Yeah, that's really cool. I never thought to use ChatGPT as a way to translate between expertise. Do you know what I mean? Like like yourself, I have an engineering background. So back in my engineering days, you know, it was always a standing joke, like the engineering team and the marketing team, and you know, they have nothing to say to each other, right? So,
yeah, that's a perfect example. I spent a long time on the engineering side explaining it to management team what it means. Like, what does a language model mean? What does inference mean? What does regression to the mean mean? And a lot of these ones make complete sense once you've described it in a language they understand.
You know, now that I'm thinking through it, I think even up the chain, right? If you're a technical expert trying to explain a business case to a CEO, let's say, could you explain it in terms that they speak in their language so that they understand what you're trying to tell them without getting too technical, right?
Yeah, a mean and a median and an average and a regression to them. But if you go to the finance team and you say it's a trend line, oh, okay, well, I know what a trend line is, and that's the same language back and forth.
I love it. That's really interesting. Okay, cool. I got some gems of some ideas here. I love it. So you're using technology to drive empathy. What could be cooler than that? Well, thank you, John, for these insights. I really hope the people watching find some gems in what you guys are doing.
I hope people take a look at it. I think it will make companies significantly better.
Hey, thanks for watching The Culture Hack. Do you want to chat culture and engagement? Give us a call and come on the show.